Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Watch Your Breaks. I work at an old refinery plant, and so they followed some old school work ethics, one of which was break time culture. We used to trickle to and from breaks according to when it fits with our tasks, and most people did not overstep their boundaries. Until one summer day last year. We had a visitor from corporate who was less than impressed by 5 guys soaking up some sun 1 minute past official break time. Management had to do the official notice thing, everyone watched their breaks. So from the next day forward, everyone was super adamant on using the contractual 5-minute wash time before their breaks, which many employees didn't even know was a thing until then. The next story is called Try to Save Them. Getting lunch several years ago with some colleagues. We had finished and I was backing out of my parking spot into the road with the 2 other gentlemen I was with in the car with me. We are all professionals, all in suits, all clean-cut adults. Clearly not folks trying to pull anything, we are leaving lunch. As I back out, I feel a thud. A young college student had backed into the side of my vehicle. I say side to establish an important fact. I was already in the middle of the road. The college student was backing out of a spot across the street. When they struck me, I was already on the road and the collision was their fault. I get out and it's no big deal to me. I tell them I'm fine swapping insurance and I'll file and get it taken care of. The college student has already called their parents though. And apparently when explaining things to Dad, they told a few half-truths to insinuate that it was actually my fault. Old's dad on the phone insisted on calling the police to get a report and try to keep me from skating. Fine by me. Cue malicious compliance. Call the cops and they eventually arrive. Before I moved my vehicle, I took photos of the scene from every angle and did a video walk around. The cop opens his door parked across the street and the college student beelines it for him, talking 90 miles a minute, complete with wild hand movements trying to model what had happened as they walked. I don't hear what college student says, but I do hear the cop, at this point besides the damage to my vehicle, say, "Yeah, what you're saying clearly didn't happen here, kiddo." Cop got all the insurance information exchanged. Talked to me and my 2 colleagues who presented consistent stories that matched the clear dent in my vehicle. Then went over with a ticket pad to the college kid. He hollered for me to go on about my day from across the street, all while the kid was trying to talk out of a ticket. Their insurance paid to fix everything. I tried to save them the ticket. The third story is called Just Be Nice. This happened to my friend a couple of months ago. He and his wife just moved into their first house about 6 months ago. Then a strong windstorm came through and damaged their fence. And by damaged their fence, I mean the fence was now leaning slightly, leaning about 70 degrees. Because home insurance won't fix the fence, plus it being winter, my friend and his wife were going to wait until spring to hire someone to fix/replace their fence. Well, their backyard neighbor did not like that. The backyard neighbor wanted the fence fixed ASAP. When the neighbor found out they were going to wait until spring, the neighbor called the city and complained that their fence was out of code. When the city inspector came out to inspect their fence, it was in fact out of code and needed to be corrected. Now the reason the neighbor was so fixated on the fence being replaced is that the neighbor has a pool in their yard and needs to have a fence around their pool for safety. Well, my friend and his wife, now angry at their neighbor, decided to only remove the fence and not replace it. This allows them to be in city code, and now when the spring hits, the neighbor is going to need to rebuild a fence on the backside of their yard if they want to fill up their pool for the summer. If the neighbor would have just been nice and not called the city like a Karen, my friend would have built the fence up in the spring, no problem. The next story is called 4 times as spicy. This is a story from my last job at a pizza/gas station disaster. I was working in the kitchen by myself this Christmas night and people were very unhappy about the wait times. I had just gotten off the phone with someone who cussed me out for 5 minutes about not being able to cook him a pizza. I was already fuming. We had 40 minutes until close and I had 2 orders and cleaning to do. A drunken toddler of a man stumbles in and then proceeds to curse at me repeatedly. He orders me to make him a medium jalapeno pizza with 4 times the normal amount of spicy. Then he stumbles to the restroom, telling me to be done with it in 10 minutes or he would be punching my lights out. I couldn't refuse walk-ins, BS policy, so I decided to make his pizza, but I did it my way. I used a total of 103 jalapenos. Yes, I counted, on that poor pizza. I also drizzled some jalapeno juice, some hot sauce and used a bit of buffalo sauce. Put it through the oven, double checked to make sure everything was cooked through and boxed it up. He stumbles out and I asked if he would like to look at the pizza before he pays, to which he states he would rather eat it than look at it. He takes it to the front, pays and walks outside. 3 minutes later he's back, except he's sweating profusely and scrambling back towards our milk. He pays for a gallon, chucks about a quarter of it and then runs outside in a dash. Ah yes, another satisfied customer. The fifth story is called Hold It There. I, 20 male, work in a wood shop where we build primarily doors. It's a good job, although my boss can be a little short-sighted at times. Recently we were cutting some of the material for a door on the table saw. So like normal human beings around heavy machinery, we try to avoid the saw blade. Well, my boss comes to help cut the next piece and asks for help. This is normal to help keep the pieces square. Mike begins to prepare to hold it. My boss gets from 8 feet away from the blade. Mike, no, you need to hold it there. He points at a spot directly in front of the blade, referencing a knot to put his hand on. You sure that's? I have been doing this for over 50 years. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. But that puts him in. Just do it, okay? Put your hand where I tell you and don't move it. So he does. He places his hand in line with the blade and they start cutting it. And he doesn't move his hand. 3 inches away, 2 inches away, 1 inch away, bang. Lucky for Mike, we have a saw stop table saw that is designed to retract and not hurt you if your finger touches the blade. However, these are not cheap to replace. About 100 for the stopping mechanism and about as much for the blade, which is then ruined. As my boss saw the table saw retract, he calls out flabbergasted. Why didn't you move your hand? You told me not to. My boss then walked away defeated and Mike and I had a good laugh as we started to replace everything. The next story is called I Like This Arrangement. I'm a shift worker in a city in the UK. My employer has limited parking and staff parking is by permit only. This permit is paid for out of wages at a fixed percent. It's less than 1% of our wages. When you are going through the onboarding process, you are given the opportunity to apply for one of these permits. As part of the application process, you are asked what your public transport journey time is. I applied for one with my 90-minute journey time each way. Driving easily cuts this in half. My shift pattern is either normal day shifts, night shifts or late shifts, which finish after midnight and are also the vast majority of my shifts. The organization also has a policy of paying for taxis home for any employee finishing after midnight, as public transport after this time is very limited. I was declined a permit for reasons which are not at all clear. They do not publish the criteria for acceptance or rejection. I, therefore, get public transport to work at a relatively token cost to me. And for most of my shifts they pay for a taxi home, which each time costs the same amount as I would have paid them in a month for a parking permit. I have since been offered a permit when management realized I was costing them on most of my shifts. I declined as I quite liked the arrangement. The last story is called Did As I Was Told. A few years ago I worked at a physical media chain in New England. My location was new, so when I was hired I was interviewed by the district manager and a higher up, because the manager hasn't been hired yet. When I applied, I made a very small window for availability, but I was also willing to close or work later shifts and work all weekends. So they agreed, and even though it was a set schedule, I did come in multiple times to cover someone else. The manager they hired was an absolute control freak. It didn't start bad, but it got ridiculous. She hated the fact that I had a set schedule, not because I was needed at other times, I was working the least desirable shifts, it was because she didn't control it. She even said that. About a year and a half of working there and her dropping hints that we might need to renegotiate my schedule again for no actual reason, she scheduled me to come in 4 hours earlier on the day before my weekend, just to shake things up. I brought it up and she told me to make plans, essentially just get over it. I was mad, but I did just that. My wife and I planned a date night when I would have normally been working. On the night in question, I get a call saying that the person who was closing that night instead of me, she swapped me with a less reliable employee, had called in sick. So I needed to come in my normally scheduled time. I was so happy to tell them that I was sorry, but couldn't change on such short notice because I made plans. The assistant manager, who was just as giddy as the manager about telling me about the check-up, had to do a split shift. She had to cancel our Tinder date because I did as I was told and made plans instead of being upset. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.